Now some news from the world over. The extent of the abuse crisis in the church around the world continues to come to light. According to a leaked report obtained by German media, 3,677 people were sexually abused in Germany between 1946 and 2014. Spiegel Online and Die Zeit said that they obtained a report commissioned by a German bishop and researched by 3 universities. Among the findings was that more than half of the victims were 13 or younger, and most of them were boys. Every 6th case involved rape, and at least 1,670 clergy members were involved. More than 900 of the abuse victims were altar boys. Horrifying. The researchers also said that there was evidence that some files were manipulated or destroyed. Many cases were not brought to justice, and that accused priests were sometimes moved to other dioceses without any disclosure to the lay faithful. In response, the German Bishops' Conference says that it regretted the leaking of the report, but that the study confirms the extent of the sexual abuse that took place. In the United States, the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C. has confirmed that the embattled Donald Cardinal Wuerl will soon travel to Rome to ask Pope Francis to accept his resignation. Wuerl was among the prelates accused by Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano of ignoring McCarrick's misdeeds and was mentioned repeatedly in the Pennsylvania grand jury report for his alleged mishandling of abusive priests as Bishop of Pittsburgh. Wuerl sent a letter to Washington, D.C. priests on Tuesday saying he would discuss his resignation with the Pope. Officially, Wuerl offered his resignation as required 3 years ago when he turned 75. Francis has yet to accept it. And as a delegation of U.S. bishops met with Pope Francis to discuss the abuse crisis on Thursday, the Holy Father accepted the resignation of West Virginia Bishop Michael Bransfield. At the same time, the Pope authorized an investigation of Bransfield. He is accused of sexually harassing adults. Baltimore Archbishop William Lori has been appointed as the administrator of the Wheeling-Charleston Diocese and is to conduct the Vatican investigation. Lori vowed, quote, to search for the truth into the troubling allegations against Bishop Bransfield. Bransfield was a former rector of the National Shrine here in Washington and is cousin, incidentally, to Monsignor Brian Bransfield, the General Secretary of the U.S. Bishops' Conference, who met with the Pope today. Joining me now with analysis and her insights on this abuse crisis, I am joined by Illinois Supreme Court Justice and a former chair of the U.S. Bishops' National Review Board, Anne Burke. Justice Burke, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for including me.
Now, you were part of this original National Review Board. It was created in 2002. You took over when Frank Keating left. What did you discover vis-a-vis the bishops, and what were the limitations of that National Review Board?
Well, it's very interesting because when the bishops and cardinals drew up the charter, which was the mandate for us to do our work, they used the word clerics. We were to investigate clerics in our work. And then just before they voted on it, they took the word clerics out significantly and added priests instead. So that precluded us from actually doing an investigation of the bishops and the cardinals. And that was definitely intentional.
And you were stonewalled as well. Bob Bennett was on the show last week. You all didn't have access to all the files you were seeking in these dioceses.
Well, that's probably true. What we were trying to get we're at the liberty of the bishops and the cardinals to give us what we asked for when we sent out 50 former FBI agents around the country to get the files. It's only what they gave us. We had no subpoena power, and we, in the beginning, somewhat trusted that they would give us everything. And of course, today, in retrospect, we know we didn't get it all. But we got a lot of information, and we discovered an awful lot about how many victims, how many alleged offenders that the John Jay College did in their research. So we did learn a lot. And even though we weren't supposed to investigate the bishops or the cardinals, some of that information gave us insight to some things. For instance, if we had offender A from a certain diocese and the bishop there, the name popped up in another diocese someplace, then we know that the bishop where the offender originally was in that diocese was removed and transferred to Diocese B and accepted by another bishop. So that kind of information gave us a lot of information about which bishops transferred which priests, which only caused more victims to be abused.
It's amazing. About a week ago, you, Justice Burke, and Leon Panetta, as well as Bob Bennett, the super attorney who was here last week, sent a letter to the president of the USCCB, Cardinal DiNardo, offering your services, asking that the original National Review Board be reassembled and reappointed to assist in dealing with this crisis. What was the response? I know you got a letter back.
We did get a response, but actually our letter was a little different, and all of the members of our former review board signed off on it. They helped write it, and being the interim chair, they authorized me to send it. But what we did in the letter is really ask DiNardo to inform the Pope that we are available to serve, to do an investigation of Cardinal McCarrick and how he got to where he is today, and other clerics, and also in terms of how many bishops knew about it and when they knew about it. But we asked DiNardo to give our letter to the Pope and have the Pope appoint us and have us only be responsible to the Pope. So that's a lot different than having the Bishops' Conference reconfigure us as an investigative body. They still have a lay review board that came after us. But what we would do would be a particular specialized investigation. So I think it's a lot different. And the response I got was from the General Secretariat in an email saying, good morning, Justice Burke. I am the General Secretariat for the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, and we have received your letter and the content therein. But something that happened recently, as you well know, and I know you're going to ask me this, is that there are certain cardinals who are in Rome today meeting with the Pope, is from what I understand. Yes. And I believe that, and I actually would, I mean, this is being very naive on my part, which I should know better, but wouldn't it be wonderful, Raymond, if DiNardo actually brought my letter to the Pope and said, these lay people really want to help, and we should accept their help? Now, am I being naive?
Well, we'll find out. Cardinal DiNardo, Cardinal Sean O'Malley, Archbishop Jose Gomez, and Monsignor Brian Bransfield, who is the secretary of the Bishops' Conference, met with the Pope, as you said a moment ago, earlier today. They apparently had a lengthy meeting. The Pope listened intently, and they communicated the situation in the U.S., and according to Cardinal DiNardo, how the body of Christ has been lacerated by the evil of sexual abuse. Give me your reaction to that. What do you hope was discussed in that meeting, and are you confident that the Pope has focused on what needs to be focused on, the problem that birthed this crisis we're seeing, not only in the United States, but around the globe?
Well, I'm confident the Pope is reacting to what's happened in Philadelphia. I'm not necessarily confident that a plan is being hatched to try to rectify the situation. And in most situations, I think, as many people could understand, is we need to know more information about exactly what happened. And that's what our board plans to do if appointed. I don't know if I really think that'll happen, but our plan is to find out what happened. We need to have total transparency and explain to the lay people in the United States, this is how this happened. Okay, now together with lay people, we are all the church, work together to try to make our church different than it was before.
Justice Burke,
we have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, the Pope has called for a summit in February on what the Vatican has described as the protection of minors. That will be the theme of this summit. All the presidents of the bishops' conferences from around the world are coming to the Vatican in February. Now, a Vatican spokesman subsequently said it will also consider the protection of vulnerable adults first Is February too late? And secondly, what do you make of this focus on the protection of minors in the formal statement?
That was done 15 years ago with the charter and our work with the National Review Board. We had the bishops, and the bishops have around the country and around the world, set up background investigations for employees who are working for archdioceses. They do investigations and teaching programs for the school children and the parents. That is very helpful in the protection of children. And I'm hoping that there is someone overseeing that, and I'm expecting that the lay review board they have in place is overseeing that those things are being done. But the elephant in the room is not what they're talking about. Why are the bishops and the cardinals who transferred priests for many years, 50 years ago plus, and continuing today, perhaps, we don't know, but that's why we want to investigate it, not talking about that? And what is the Pope going to do about that? The bishops that are sitting before him, some of them transferred. We have Worrell, we have others that know about it. We have McCarrick that got transferred and knew about, or at least if they didn't transfer them themselves, then absolutely they knew who did.
Yeah, well, I tend to agree with you, Justice Burke. Look, my problem is we are dealing here with, to my eye, is a vampiric culture of predators who promoted and protected one another to continue this culture. But how do you root that out? I mean, we're talking about bishops and the misuse of their power.
Well, if they're not going to do, well, first of all, I don't think it's one thing or another. I think, first of all, that every diocese, every state's attorney, every attorney general should be reviewing and looking at what's happened in their own state. And the power of the civil authority subpoena to get all the files will do that. I don't think any National Review Board or any review board will be given all the information. I think the trust factor has been so eroded in our church worldwide that no one is going to believe that the bishops are going to cooperate. So it's actually for that, knowing how many there are and what's still happening up to today, it needs to be done through the civil authorities. I hate to say it, but I think that's the only way we're going to get trust back.
Well, Worrell is submitting his resignation. He's going to the Pope. Bishop Bransfield of Wheeling, West Virginia, he's under investigation for allegations of harassment of adults. You've got Cardinal DiNardo, who, as you mentioned a moment ago, he's accused of moving a priest who has now been arrested for abuse in Houston. How do you restore that trust? Some bishops are claiming, Justice Burke, that this crisis is behind them, that it's in the past. But it seems we're seeing more instances of either cover-up or even in your own diocese, just in the last month, Cardinal Supich in Chicago has had to remove 3 priests from ministry, a pastor for misconduct, and 2 priests caught in a sexual act down in Miami. So is it over?
No, it's not over until we know who's doing what and when. And we have to be able to trust the bishops and the cardinals, and we can't do that, so we have to investigate them. So I think we have a long way to go before we can go back to the actual being able to trust what's happening in our church.
Justice Burke, the AGs in New York, New Jersey, New Mexico, Missouri, Nebraska, Kentucky, and other states have now opened up formal inquiries. How confident are you that they will find the files that they're seeking? I've heard tales of dioceses destroying personnel files long ago.
I'm pretty confident if there are files there, they will get them with subpoena power. Our own Attorney General Lisa Madigan also has made inquiry to all the bishops and cardinals in our state. She's told me she's gotten a little pushback. I don't know what her next steps are, but she may go for it as well. But I think sometimes state's attorneys from every county in Illinois, for instance, we have 102 counties, might begin to look at their diocese in their county as well, because victims, they need to have justice, and the closer you are to where the crime is, the victims will see that something's happening, and that's what's the problem. not only the people who have not been victimized in our Catholic Church, but those victims who have been abused. They need to see something happening. And if it's more local, like in the states or in their own counties, I think we're going to be moving forward. And until that happens, I really don't see just the bishops doing anything. I mean, even if it is a worldwide synod on protecting children, that's a wonderful thing. But that's the elephant in the room is themselves. They should be calling a synod to weed out and have those cardinals and bishops admit to what they've done and have them resign.
Give me your thoughts, Justice Burke, on the Vigano charges. Archbishop Carlo Maria Vigano, who released that bombshell letter a little more than a week ago. I hear he is in hiding. Do you believe those charges are credible, and do they demand investigation, in your opinion?
And any kind of charges or rumors or hearsay is just that until it's investigated. There's only credible charges once there's an investigation. And I do believe there should be an investigation into that as well.
Do you see this as some kind of ideological struggle, as some have tried to characterize it? That this is part of a coup to take down the Pope? Or do you think these are legitimate charges that tend to cohere with what you uncovered as part of that National Review Board all those years ago?
I think it's a little bit of each. I do believe that they have to be investigated. It could be some infighting, political fighting, as happens in the secular world as well.
Right.
One says this and one says that, but until you actually investigate it, which we could do, because it's a small population of people we have to investigate. It isn't like there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people. There's a small population. And I think by an investigation, that's what we did as the National Review Board in the very beginning. We sat at the table, the 12 of us, and said, we're not at the same place beginning of what the problem is. So we undertook doing interviews to over 100 people, not only cardinals and bishops, but offenders, and psychologists and journalists and people who have known about this to determine, and that's how we ended up with our report. We needed an investigation of where everybody was on and be on the same page.
Yeah.
So I do think it's the same kind of due diligence that's required now is an investigation.
And you see, my position has always been, Vigano claims these documents are at either the Secretary of State or at the Nunciature, the embassy in Washington, D.C. Open up the files. I don't know why the Pope hasn't authorized the release of those files. Let's see them. Disprove Vigano and call him out as a liar if he's wrong. Or if there's substance to this, let's root out the malefactors here.
Absolutely, you're absolutely correct, and that's what needs to be done, but it isn't getting done. So that's why I say that the civil authorities have to investigate. That letter apparently has made some claims that I think might be criminal in some ways, and given that, there should be an investigation.
Yeah.
And someone called the other day to say that the international courts might have to look at this, where the Vatican is attached to. Maybe the international courts, maybe they have to appear before the international courts and have some questions put to the Vatican on why they haven't done something.
The International Criminal Court you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah. If the Pope covered up abuse, Justice Burke, in Argentina, as has been alleged, or if he knew about McCarrick's sins but allowed him to remain in power or advance, or allow other men to advance through him, should the Pope resign?
I think he first has to admit it. I'm not sure about resignation, but I think he has to admit it just like the rest of the cardinals and the bishops, admit what they've done, and talk to the lay people, ask us what we need to know. I mean, we are the body of Christ as well. It's not just them. I mean, they're not pretty soon not going to have anybody in church if they don't do this.
Well, it's interesting, his advice to Cardinal Wuerl was, go back to Washington, consult with your priests, discern with them, and I'm told he didn't get a vote of confidence from his clergy, which is why he's now going to Rome to submit. His resignation's already there. It's just asking the Pope to accept it. He's already almost 3 years over his resignation age. But that's an interesting mindset that the Pope had. Go and discern with your priests, with your people. And we'll see if that holds true for him as well.
Well, he said, I think he said priests.
Yeah.
And But it needs more than that, because I've been getting lots of calls from priests as well. They're so disappointed across the board around the country, and that they don't know what to do. They don't even know who to believe anymore. Yes, I think that the Pope should ask the bishops to have some discernment with their priests, but they also have to come to the lay people in their diocese. They have to come and come clean, so we know. You know, if you just check the numbers every Sunday, it's fewer and fewer.
What advice would you give the bishops
Mass.
and the Vatican, Justice Burke, about getting to the bottom of this? I have long called for a full forensic audit of every diocese. I believe there should be an appointment of a Vatican-backed lay investigative body, similar to what you're suggesting, with an affiliated canonical investigative team of cardinals. All predators, regardless of age or sex of the victim, should be removed from the church. That's been my position from the beginning. Your thoughts?
I agree with you. I do think so. And that's what we've asked the Pope to do, to appoint us or someone else. We have the institutional knowledge of what to do, and we're willing to do it as, I would think, reputable lay people who have done work for the bishops before, and do the investigations and then come up with the recommendations as we did before. And they didn't follow us the last time, but this time they would really have to.
Yeah.
Either that, or we just all have to walk away.
Would you be for making this information public? Cardinal DiNardo, and I hear some members of that executive committee, are discussing a plan where there would be a lay investigative arm, but they would only report to the nuncio and to the Holy See, not publicly. Is that valid in your mind?
That's a problem. No. Everything has to be transparent. Yes, I think we would report to the Pope, not to the nuncio. How do I know that nuncio hasn't been a bishop that's transferred priests? I mean, I don't know that. We want to investigate that. That's what we want to investigate. And that's why we sent the letter to the Bishops' Conference and asked them to send our letter to the Pope himself. Now, it's nice that DiNardo is there today. Maybe he gave the letter, although I doubt it, to the Pope. But that's the only way anyone's going to believe what the bishops do. We can't be reporting to other bishops when we don't even know what they've done or not done in their background and in their history. We have to investigate that first.
Justice Anne Burke, thank you for your perspective.
And it should be public.
And for your time, and we'll keep them honest, and I agree with you. I think it needs to be public. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.